This mantel is the history of Sheridan, and it's a very old piece of wood. The wood is over 150 years old. It was in the grain elevator. So this beam come out of the grain elevator. It's going to go back in the grain elevator in Sheridan, Illinois, putting the history of Sheridan on the mantel. So I'll show you the drawings and the photos that we have from the Historical Society. It's a piece of cedar that measured over 10 foot long. It's 14 inches wide. I cut off a couple feet off the end here, and I'm going to make the mounting brackets out of those pieces. And it has a couple nails in there, and I'm going to keep all that. We're trying to keep this looking like it's 150 years old. So we're keeping that rustic look. The drawing is starting here in the middle with the Sheridan logo. This is the elevator. The pictures of the elevator from the Historical Society is there. That's the town logo. This is the train that come to get the grain. So that's the picture of the train there. This is the school that was added on in the 1950s. The bridge that goes over the Fox River and the old mill. The old mill right there, and that old mill now is a bar. It's still called the old mill. So this part of the mantel is looking north, and then coming down here further on the mantel to the left is looking south. And this is the way the buildings were in the old days. The bank is pretty significant. It's still there. So this is the bank here. Where this house is now is a grocery store. So the house has been removed. And then this is the Fox River. So the Fox River kind of goes around. And this is the rail trestle. So the train that brings the grain from the elevator comes over the Fox River going this way. That's the train trestle there, so that's what we're putting in. I am roughing this out now, so that's the train trestle in the Fox, and I'm coming down. So this is the bank here, the buildings, the row of buildings. I'm going to a depth of this mantel. It's going to be 4 inches. The difficulty with the mantel is because it is so old, it has a lot of nail holes. Here is a nail that is in there, so I'm driving this nail in a little bit further so I don't have to pull it out. But it's the old square nail. So that's right in the center here where the logo is going to be. And of course we're dealing with the cracks and everything. And that's the grain elevator. That's the old grain truck that belonged to the business. And the train and that. So coming down to this side, when we get the Fox River here, because the Fox River kind of runs around Sheridan. So because of the nail holes, there's nail holes that go way into the mantel, 2.5, 3 inches deep here. Be aligned with this bridge that goes over the Fox River, so I put it above the bridge so I could, because I'm going to go deep there, and I don't have any nail holes below, luckily. If I did, I would have to fill it. This tree here is going to have to be set back a little bit more because there was a nail hole here and here. A piece kind of come out of here. These small holes are holes from bugs. So they're going in maybe about 3/4 of an inch. Then I'm going to keep the end of the mantel rustic, and then the brackets are going to be as rustic as I can make them. They're keeping the old surface on there. And these nail holes, they're square, where the square nails went in. I'm going to try to keep as many of those as possible. Square nails date back quite a ways. The chisels that I'm using, that's designed back 400 or 500 years ago. They were using chisels like this for wood carving. Many of the chisels that I'm using here were used by Tom Meyerhofer during the First World War. So I've got many of his chisels. He made his living off of using it, so these chisels date back quite a ways. So what I do is I start from the deepest portion. I first go to the background and then I work forward and I develop the scene as it comes forward. Right now I've got this roughed out and now I'm doing the contouring before I start putting in the details. Making sure all my planes, this street here is lined up, all these buildings on the same street as you're looking south in Sheridan. With this crack going across here, I'm just going to have to try to blend it in. Cedar is quite soft, so it's a little bit more difficult to put the detail in. It's like trying to put detail into a marshmallow. So I'm just smoothing off areas now so I can start putting in the windows and the texturing. Making some contours and some interesting shapes in the background. And that will give me some dark areas that will swallow the light, kind of the negative space. So this top shelf, I want to keep this roughness here, and it being cedar, I don't want to make it too weak, so it's fairly thin here, but it widens out quickly. This old piece of wood, the bugs had really gotten in there. The bugs had eaten it so much that this trunk of the tree I had here was all disintegrated. So we have the bank of the river here. I'm putting a couple trees there, and the school's going to be here. So this is the Fox River with the mill in that on this end. This train I have in perspective, keeping the top fairly flat, but the bottom is rising back, so it's going way behind the school. In the background, in the shadows, I have just other little clumps of trees. There's a knot I'm contending with right here. This knot is kind of running back in there. So I'm getting rid of the loose wood around the knot. The knot's going to give us some very nice coloring here, and I'll try to work it into one of the cars of the train. This was a section in here that came out, but I was able to glue it back in. It's a continuation of these cracks here. The way the perspective runs on this mantle is everything is receding back along this plane. The horizon is the vanishing point, but it's down to the right of the mantle. The vanishing point on this mantle is where the river is going, way back here. The train is running the same way, and all the buildings as we come down here, the elevator, the truck, and these buildings are all heading towards that same vanishing point way to the right. Cedar is a wood that lasts very well in the weather, and that's why the wood survives so good, but it is a softer wood. It's ready for the first coat of varnish. I am going to use the Helmsman, the Minwax product, indoor-outdoor polyurethane varnish. It's an oil-based varnish that's clear satin. And I'm going to take a burnt umber artist oils, and I'm going to create the shadows with that. So this is the clear varnish. Right now there's no stain at all in it, and it is really giving it a nice darkening effect. I like the way it brings out all the lettering, shadows. The chairs here, the benches in the park are getting a little lost, so I'm going to put a little shadow behind them